Thanks everybody for hanging in. We've got 3 sessions left. We're going to talk about sustainability right now. We're also going to talk about LCB restructuring, and then we're going to do a little bit of a wrap-up session where we talk about answer any just broad questions again, revisit some of the stuff we talked about at the start of the day earlier this morning, and then in particular how data and things like the data dashboard that you were looking at during our cannabis hospitality seminar can really help us tell the story better to our policymakers moving forward. This one, I think, is the most rapidly evolving piece of legislation that we've got going on. This one, a little bit of history. We did a lot of work for a while trying to attend to it on the regulatory side of things. If you recall, as I was talking about the different ways that we affect the way that the law is written, we've gone through a couple of different routes and now really excited about the developments that are happening there. Jason, I'm going to let you describe it. Jason is our former board president and a member of the board here at the Cannabis Alliance, as well as the chair of the Sustainability Committee. Winner of the Jack Herrera Best New Packaging for all recycled material doob tubes manufactured here in Washington State. And I know there's been some developments there, but Jason, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. And you can say a little bit more about yourself, how this bill came to be, and what's the latest on it. I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, so as Caitlin mentioned, we initially with our committee had hoped to work through with the LCV directly because most if not all these rules could be implemented directly with their participation. But as we all know, LCV has been a fairly challenging body to work with in recent years. We did get a couple of really cool initiatives done directly with them back in 2019 that took effect in 2020. That was our 4 mil to 2 mil bag thickness rule and getting rid of the dosing caps. And those are both very successful and great changes that we made. So we were hoping that we'd be able to get this next round of ideas done directly with them, but kind of got some really big pushback as far as timeline and ability to address this issue and not make it a priority. So we didn't like that answer. So we're going to pass this bill and make it a priority for the LCB because we think these initiatives will have some really positive impact for our industry and for our environment. So we kind of have 5 key components of this bill. So I'll kind of start off with breaking down each one of those components, allow for some comment, and we'll kind of dive into kind of what the basic rule is, and as well as some strategy points around each one. So the first one is around our inner edible packaging rules for our edible lines. So right now, by rule, you have to have all of those inner edibles or the edible products flow wrapped essentially within an exterior CR package. Not only is that very wasteful for all of our plastic use in our industry, a lot of consumers I don't think even really like that either. And there are many, many other states. In fact, Wild's a member of ours, and they are thinking about 19 different states across the country. And they're very passionate about not using plastic in their packaging lines. And this state, I believe, is the only state that they're using plastic in because of our regulations. They have their edibles in multifunctional CR packaging across all other markets except for Washington that do not require any edible any inner flow wraps. And that obviously has a massive impact on our waste for those types of products. So all the other states have already kind of shown that this model works. And so we want to bring really our state in alignment with essentially the rest of the state models within the United States to really have a big impact on our waste footprint for that. You know, we're selling millions and millions of 10 packs of edibles in this state. And so each of those 10 packs has 10 pieces of trash added to it by law. And so we want to get that removed. We think that's a pretty straightforward and good idea. It would obviously have some labor benefits and cost benefits to our producer processors, but more importantly, it would take out literally tens of millions of pieces of trash that's all single-use plastic that's non-recyclable out of our industry pretty quickly, I believe. And so we've talked with a lot of edibles producers, and they would love to get rid of their flow wrap machines and have a more sustainable packaging model for those types of products. There has been significant pushback on this in past attempts where that's been brought up from either other organizations or even individual businesses, I think, within the industry have attempted this before. And the big pushback has been with prevention. And the prevention groups are concerned about child safety access and things of that nature. The one thing that's never been proposed up to this point, which we are proposing in this bill, would be to, in order to get rid of that inner edible flow wraps, make that exterior packaging a multi-use CR package so that it never loses its child-resistant functionality. That technology exists widely across a bunch of different markets. As I mentioned, Wild, they're in a variety of different states. They have various different exterior packages that do not lose that CR functionality once they're opened. And so we are actually arguing that by making that change, not only is it a waste improvement, but this would actually make it even safer from a child access perspective. So we really kind of feel like we're killing two birds with one stone with this approach. And again, the multifunctional CR packaging is not a huge cost increase, and then obviously there's a cost benefit decrease from the producer processors that were to remove the edible flow wraps. And so we think ultimately there's still a cost savings there for our producers with that. And the other important thing on this bill is we're not going to force everybody to go to this model. If somebody's already in their lane and they've invested a bunch of technology or equipments within their brand and they just can't pencil out making this shift, they'll still be allowed to do the current model if they choose to. But from what we've talked with many different edible manufacturers, it seems like most people are pretty on board with this idea and would love to make the transition. But we would keep the door open for essentially the current model for edibles if people choose to, or you can go to that multifunctional CR package that would then allow you to remove all the inner flow wraps. Currently, right now, there was a tweak at some point in the last 10 years where the LCB does actually have an approval model. So there are a few brands actually that do not require flow wraps, but that's a very arbitrary and unclear approval process within the LCB. And as we know, the LCB is pretty backlogged on getting their work done. And so we think this would also help them as well by not having to worry about that type of approval process and have one kind of standard rule for everybody in the industry. So that's the breakdown on that first section. Any questions on that one? Let's see here. Similar to California has basically, yeah, that's a Fortuna. That's a great question. So yeah, there's, I might even have right here, maybe. Yeah, you can do a paper tube. So this one actually doesn't have a actual CR functionality, but you can put a little press device on the side of that you have to open. And then you can have multifunctional CR packaging. There's also Mylar bags out there that maintain its CR functionality even after they've been opened. There's CR tins would be another example that would be a multifunctional CR package. So there's quite a few different branding opportunities within that multifunctional CR package solution. So it's not like brands would have to, change their entire brand identity or just completely change their packaging solutions to adapt to this. And again, we also would allow people to stay with the status quo if they choose to, but there are quite a few options available for these types of solutions going forward. And as I said, pretty much every other state in the union is already has a model like this, and we're kind of the odd ducks on this one. So we want to get in alignment with the rest of the states as well. Let's see here. So the next topic on this omnibus bill is addressing concentrate and vapor packaging. So concentrate vapor packaging, as I'm sure everybody knows, is required to be packaged in single grams. That's by rule, and so you cannot put 2 grams of concentrate in a jar, even though most of the jars we buy in this industry could easily hold 2, 3, 4, 5 grams in a single container with the ones we're already using. And obviously, we could also have different larger jars to allow for larger packs, like potentially 5 or up to the daily limits, which is 7 grams allowed to be purchased per day. So we just want to change the packaging rules around vapor and concentrated products to align with our daily purchasing limits. It's already that way with flour. You can buy an ounce of flour a day. You can buy that ounce of flour in a single jar or a single bag. And so we want to essentially bring our concentrate and vapor product rules in alignment with the flour packaging so that if we can buy 7 grams of vapes or 7 grams of concentrate a day, then we should be allowed as a customer to choose a bulk packaging model that would have a significant reduction in our waste footprint for those types of products, especially with the vapor products as the single use disposables have gotten really popular. If we allowed those to have, say, a 2 gram tanker is maybe becoming the normal industry standard in our state, which that's also happened in other states already. Then obviously, if we can have 2 or 3 grams in a single tanker, we're going to start using less of those disposable devices, which would be a real big positive for the industry as well. And so also the other point on this is when it comes to concentrate packaging, there already are multiple brands that are serving multi-pack concentrate solutions for our industry right now. I've seen 2 gram packs, I've seen 7 gram packs, 5 gram packs, I believe, but they are individually packed and grammed out in individual jars. And then they typically will put that in a blister pack. And so again, this creates a bunch of unneeded packaging and labor costs for our industry. And if we would just allow for those same products to be sold in a single jar or maybe a couple of jars. That obviously reduces a lot of the waste footprint for that type of packaging. So, and if we tie it to our daily limits, then if those daily limits change in the future, then we don't have to go back and rechange these rules. And so if the limits were to increase or decrease in the future as far as what you're allowed to buy in a day, our packaging should really stay in alignment with what you're allowed to purchase within a single day. So that's really what we're advocating for there. There already are multiple multi-tanker gram vape products available in the marketplace. So this technology already exists. And then, like I said, as far as gramming multiple grams in a jar, that's very easy to do. Our 9 ml kind of concentrate containers that are typically kind of your industry standard, or maybe even a 5 ml. Even your 5 ml concentrate container could probably hold 2 grams of concentrate in it. That 9 mls probably could hold 3 or 4 grams in it, no problem. And then we can obviously have larger jars to accommodate for that. Those jars are in CR packaging, child resistant packaging already. And so, since it's already in a CR type of package, whether there's 1 gram or 2 gram, there's really no additional exposure to child risk access and things of that nature. So, we think this completely keeps us in alignment with kind of child resistant safety concerns and things of that nature, but also would have a massive impact on our waste reduction across the board there. As far as strategy goes on this one, we do expect prevention to be pushing back on this. They tend to historically push back on anything concentrate related because they just generally don't like that segment of our industry. So that's kind of where we expect to see some pushback there. We've talked to a lot of different stakeholders in the industry. People across the board seem to be very excited about these proposals. I've talked with retailers that seem to like the idea. Lots of producer processors are really excited about this as well. And then, like I said, the waste impact for our industry would be pretty large. And so, really, I think the only pushback is going to be coming from that kind of prevention side of things. But I think the key kind of argument back to those individuals is, again, we're not expanding the market. We're not really offering anything in the concentrate space that's not already happening. We're just going to be packaging it much more efficiently and much more safely. And while there aren't 2 gram takers on the market right now in our state, those things are, consumption kind of controlled devices because you can only kind of get so much in a pull off of a vape anyway, and so you're not really increasing overconsumption or reducing child resistance for having a multi-gram versus a single gram vape container as well. So we think this really still is within alignment of all of the child resistancy concerns and youth access and things of that nature, but also has a real big benefit for our environment. Any questions on that one? Doesn't look like it, so we'll jump into the next one. Let's see here. So the next one is regarding allowing for batch and digital tagging for our plants. Right now, if I don't know, if probably have some people that aren't growers here, but the rules for our state for any of our wholesale growers is you have to individually tag every single plant you're growing. That is extremely lengthy process for people to do. It's typically using single-use plastic tags, which are not good for the environment. And there are just a lot smarter ways to do something like that that don't require that waste component to it. And so we're advocating for allowing for digital and batch tagging essentially within the farms that can be done essentially without adding single-use plastic to our landfill waste streams. And so I think there are quite a few states that have already made these adjustments. I think Colorado is one of them where they made some adjustments there. And so there's already been multiple states that have kind of acknowledged that that was a kind of a flawed model to start with, and that we can maintain all of our traceability systems just through digital means and not require that physical single-use plastic tagging. John, you had a question about digital tags? Yeah, so it's essentially just tracking it digitally. So, if you're an indoor grow, you could basically have a computer program that says, I've got 50 plants in this room growing, and it's, this strain. And so you could essentially do all the traceability that we're doing already on these printed tags and just have a digital record of it, as opposed to a physical printed out record. And so this is actually kind of a unique one because the LCB has actually agreed to look at this. But the irony is that they agreed to look at this about 2 years ago and they've done nothing on it. So they kind of gave us a soft yes on the idea and then have done nothing. And so we decided to put this into the bill because they haven't done anything on this yet. So if we're when we get this bill across the finish line, if they haven't addressed this, then this will hopefully force the timeline on this issue as well. But this is actually the one issue of these five in this bill that's included where the LCB has kind of a sort of acknowledged that they're open to this idea, but they just haven't prioritized it. So as long as they're not making a priority, we're going to keep it in the bill with the rest of these initiatives. So this is probably going to be one of the more easier ones and least controversial. I don't think prevention would be too worried about something like this. Like I really haven't heard of any key groups or segments of the industry that are concerned about this. And again, the LCB seems to be on board with it as well. So it should be a fairly uncontroversial piece of the bill. Let's see here. Okay. So the next issue is once we get some of these things changed, some of the challenges we have around some of our packaging waste is there's been a lot of ideas that I've talked to around a variety of different individuals. I've looked at some concepts myself. There's actually a company down in Oregon that's already doing some upcycling and recycling models where they allow for empty packages to be brought back into the stores and then for the purposes of upcycling and recycling. Unfortunately, in Washington State, that no open containers rule we have at retail prevents anything from like that from occurring in our state. And so we want to get that modified. We can still have a no open containers rule as far as like they don't want people to buy a package in the store and open it right there and obviously consume it on the store. So that's all would still be in place, but we want to basically just add a little addendum that specifically calls out that customers can bring back their empty jars, their empty tubes, whatever we might have, that we could create some upcycling solutions for, and basically just create the pathway so that if people want to create some models like that, that we wouldn't have any regulations the way from doing something like that. So I think that's also a fairly uncontroversial, easy thing to make adjustments for. And then we would then open the opportunity for retail stores or producer processors or possibly even partnerships with both, where we could maybe have some glass jar take back programs where those can maybe be cleaned and then reused and resold into the marketplace. Or as we're going to get into the vape battery bill component real soon, if we get that addressed, then if we have some spent batteries, we could have a battery collection program within our retail stores where the best spent vape batteries could then be deposited into a flame retardant box. And then when they're filled up, they can be shipped off to a proper recycling facility for that proper disposal of the batteries. And so things like that really are all great ideas that can't be accomplished until we get this rule language change. So that's in the bill as well. And then the final piece of the bill, probably going to be the most kind of the toughest component of it, and potentially some pushback from some individuals, is our battery bill. And what we're proposing is requiring all vapor devices to have a removable battery at end of life. So right now, as we mentioned earlier, the single-use disposables are very popular. They've become a huge percentage of the market segment. And honestly, I've talked to a lot of people that really enjoy the product from a consumer perspective. So it seems to be something that has quite a bit of demand. And when something has demand from consumers, even if you tried to ban something like that, it's probably going to still be available somewhere. And so I'm not a big fan of banning things. And so as opposed to creating a ban on these products, I think the smarter idea is to create a solution for that product so that it can still exist and not be wasteful. And so by requiring the vapor devices to have essentially just a removable hatch on those things, there's actually already a few products in the market that do have that technology built in now. It's not widespread. I haven't seen it across large segments yet, but it's a very easy tooling change, and you could just essentially have a hatch on the bottom of those devices where at the end of life you could then pop that battery out and recycle it. Right now, because the battery is attached to the device and that device has cannabis residue, even when it's spent, it becomes a product that cannot be recycled or handled in any way, shape, or form by anybody out there because you've got cannabis residue and a battery that has to be recycled properly. And so we have to be able to separate those in order to address that waste issue. Battery explosions and fires are actually, I think, the number 4 deadliest job in this country now. So these MRF centers and waste facility processing facilities are having a ton of not only fatalities but serious injuries from these batteries that are exploding in their places and catching fire. And while a lot of them I think are from the nicotine space, I'm sure some of them are from our industry as well. And so we want to be better stewards of that and create a solution for that. And I think if we don't create a solution for this, then the likely response at some point will be enough people will get upset about it enough that there'll be bans discussed. And so I think we being proactive around a solution now, so that we can prevent a ban in the future makes a lot of sense. And so that's kind of how we're approaching that. We obviously want to give the bill's got some language in there that would allow for some time for adjustment because obviously there's going to be some time requirements to adjust the tooling on the product lines. The factories are going to have to sell through their old inventory. People that have bought those older models are going to have to sell through them when they're here. And then at the retail store level as well, people that have got their inventory in their retail stores, they need to be able to sell through that too. So we're allowing for, a few years of adjustment once this passes so that the industry can accommodate and adjust appropriately. So we're not putting any, undue burden or financial stress on our industry that's already a very tough industry and kind of low profit margin situation. So we're also being very thoughtful about that as well to make sure that we're not putting people under any undue stress, but creating that starting point at least to where we get the clock ticking once we pass this to where we know we need to make some adjustments and we can have a few years to get that accomplished. And once that's done, there'll be some really good opportunities for some battery recycling. There's actually a really cool component of one of the bills that Zero Waste Washington passed in the last couple of years around manufacturer responsibility that sounds like might even be a potential funding mechanism for our batteries if we do get this passed. And so there might actually even be some state funds that could potentially support like a statewide battery recycling program. And so that's exciting because oftentimes those types of ideas aren't always paid for. And so there actually might be some opportunity to not only implement a plan like this, but then even potentially have some state support behind it in the future. So that's kind of where we're at on that one. Obviously, there may be some people concerned in the distribution side of things if they're concerned about making those tooling changes. But as I mentioned, we think being proactive with these changes is better than facing bans in the future, and then also allowing people, a few years to make those adjustments are kind of our counters to those concerns to be mindful of them and make some positive impact on the environment as well. Any questions on that? Yeah, Fortuna made a comment in here. I'll read it. Partner worked at a battery store and turned people away trying to recycle disposable vapes. I've heard that as well, very frequently, and hated knowing that people were probably just throwing them in the trash because there's no real option to take care of them. That's 100% correct. I mean, it's a real problem, and obviously the nicotine space is quite a bit larger than our space, and so they're arguably the bigger piece of the problem percentage wise. But I think just like we mentioned earlier, we think cannabis is certainly not on par with alcohol. It's just like within the nicotine space. I think, cannabis can be better than nicotine and alcohol combined, especially from an industry perspective too. So I think having that kind of proactive mindset about coming up with some real logical solutions as opposed to, facing some of these bans or just kind of burying our heads in the sand and saying, well, it's too hard of a problem to solve. This is something we put a lot of thought into at our committee. We've been talking about vape batteries and that kind of challenge for, I think, as long as we started our committee. I think we started the committee in 2018. And really from the jump, we were like, well, what do we do about vapes? And nobody really had an answer. It's a tough answer to solve. And we think after quite a bit of time kind of pondering this, that this is really the best path forward that, like I said, doesn't ban the product, but creates some sustainable solutions going forward. Yeah, Mike, that's a good comment. Vendors could collect their own products. Yeah, I think there could be some real interesting opportunities for, again, these take back programs built into the store model. I think for even simple things like glass jars, a lot of brands now are starting to pre-print their packaging. And so instead of just a jar with a label on it, they might spend quite a bit of money and do some really nice packaging where it's silk screen and it's got their brand. I mean, if we had a recycling program opened up, there's no reason I don't think that a producer processor could partner with their retail partner and have a collection bin that allowed for their jars to be brought back. They could then go back to the facility, be sanitized, and then repackaged and reused. And at that point, brands could even spend a little bit more on their packaging because it's not no longer necessarily a single-use item, and really create not only better looking branded products, but then have that kind of circular model, which is just a really cool concept. So I think there's just a lot of opportunities that we could create for even further kind of entrepreneurial endeavors around sustainability. But in order to do that, we've got to get the bill passed so that we can kind of get the regulations out of the way and get these good ideas off the ground. Let's see, another question from Ahmed King. Would it be possible to have recycle bins similar to clothing donation bins, but for cannabis jars? Uh, the cartridges is probably a tough one, I would imagine, but the cannabis jars, I think, as we just mentioned, I mean, I think that's a really easy solution. We've already have a vendor in place that would essentially that already has a national model where if we have those batteries removable, that they have an entire program where those batteries can be collected, a bin can be filled up, it then gets a UPS sticker, gets shipped to a national recycling facility for batteries, and then it gets properly addressed that way. So there's so many different things we could really create with an in-store model. And from the stuff I've studied around other kind of sustainability models and things that tend to work and have any kind of legs, you really need to create any successful program needs to have very little friction for the consumers to participate in. If you're asking the consumer that lives in Bellingham to drive to Seattle to drop off their recycling, they're probably not going to do it. But if they can go right back to the cannabis store that they already buy their products at regularly and then bring that battery that's spent or that glass jar to recycle or a doob tube or any of those types of solutions, then that really does create a lot of interesting opportunities for not only the retail partners, but as well as the producer processors or even just new ancillary companies that might want to create models that could potentially work for that as well. So all of those things are possible, but we've got a few rules in the way that need to be adjusted before we can get that done. Jamie says, I have a huge tote of glass jars I've bought since being a patient, but no more room to store them. Yes, I actually have a giant collection of concentrate jars. Just like you, Jamie, I've been saving those with the hope of having a upcycling model or recycling model for those. A lot of people don't know that the glass jars, when they're below a certain size, even though that material is recyclable, it's not recycled. If you put your tiny little glass jars in the blue bin, they're not going where they need to go because they're too small. And so something like concentrate jars would be a really cool model to have an in-store collection program that could actually then collect them and either sanitize them and then upcycle them and resell them, or some sort of recycling process. And as I mentioned before, I already know a guy in Oregon that's got a really impressive model going across the whole state and doing some really cool upcycling and recycling programs down there. And so this is not, rocket science. This isn't some crazy idea. It's already been done in some other municipalities. And we just got to get this bill passed so that we can open the door for those opportunities for us up here. The Oregon company is called P3. They sell packaging and they've got some really cool, both, like I said, upcycling and recycling programs. I think if you get onto their Instagram or their website, I think like every month they even post the amount of tons of plastic and glass and things of that nature that they're collecting and then actually doing either recycling or upcycling on. And have really done some impressive work. And so it would be really cool for us to get the opportunity to maybe create some similar models up here. Any other questions on the bill? Did you have anything you wanted to add, Caitlin?
I don't think so. I don't know, Jason, if you wanted to sort of give a little update about what our next steps are. I saw somebody ask if we've got the bill number, or I'm happy to do that too if you'd prefer.
Yeah, as far as next steps, we do not have a bill number yet. We just got the rough draft of the bill earlier this week. So Caitlin and I and our lobbyists, a few others, are going through that right now, just fine tuning the details on that. But on initial review, it actually looks really good. I don't think there's a bunch of changes we need to make. And once that final draft is done, then we'll be sending it in, maybe still for pre-filing. I think we're getting close to that deadline, but we'll definitely have it filed this month. And so we should have a bill number shortly. And once we do, I'm sure we'll get the word out through our channels, probably through our email or socials that we've got a bill ready to go. And as far as next steps, we've got our lobby day coming up next month, and so make sure if you're not signed up for that to sign up for lobby day. We'll be talking about this bill as well as all the bills we've been talking about today at our lobby day, and then really going into session. We'll be working real aggressively to try to get this thing accomplished. Somebody asked about the sponsor. We've got Senator Shoemake as our prime sponsor on the bill. That's really exciting because she's actually the chair of the Environmental Committee on the Senate. And when we actually sat down with Heather at Zero Waste, a good friend of mine, I'm a member of her organization too. She's kind of been a great sounding board for me around making sure I'm making good decisions in the sustainability space. And when I met with her a while ago, she said, if you can get Shoemake on board, that improves your ability to get things through when it comes to sustainability, because obviously she's the chair of that group in the Senate. So anytime you can have kind of the head chair as your prime sponsor on a bill like this, I think is a good starting point at least. And so we're excited about having her support on that. And then of course we'll be reaching out to other representatives to get some further buy-in as well. But really the legislature, in my experience of all the years in lobbying, they seem to be very passionate about these types of issues. Our state is pretty green, especially when you kind of grade it on a curve to a lot of the other states in this country. And so, while the LCB doesn't seem to put a top priority on stuff like this, I think the legislature absolutely will put a much higher priority on a bill like this than maybe the LCB might. And so, hopefully that'll be the case, and we can get this thing done fairly soon. And most of these issues really shouldn't be very controversial. These are pretty well thought out ideas, and the industry I think should have very broad support on it. Consumers seem to be very excited about it, and again, I think the legislator will be very supportive of it as well.
Thanks, Jason. What do you anticipate? I'm asking questions that I know the answers to, but just for a little bit of discussion, what do you anticipate some of the pushback is going to be on this legislation? We've sort of referenced in general, but just very directly, what do you imagine people will be spending time testifying in opposition?
Well, Ed, earlier when we were kind of going through each issue, a couple of those issues, I called out that the prevention groups typically can be some of our biggest kind of pushback groups regarding some of these initiatives. They generally push back against anything concentrate and vapor related. So that's kind of just their status quo when it comes to that. And then we also, on the edible bill component, they've already commented quite a few times publicly that they think this inner edible flow wrap thing is a wonderful thing and keeps people safe. So we already have really public record of them saying that they're going to fight for keeping that status quo. But as I mentioned with the edible bill, nobody's really introduced this idea of the multifunctional CR package. So that's my hope that that kind of component will address those concerns. And then probably the biggest challenge I think in the bill is for sure the battery component piece, just because it's a little bit of a change there as far as the how these things are made. There may be some people in the industry that may not like the idea of going through a change like that right now. But as I mentioned with that one, if we're not proactive with this, then I think we're going to get a lot worse legislation in the fairly near future that nobody will like. And so to me, that's my counter to anybody that might be concerned around if you're a vapor company and you're making these products and you're concerned about these potential forced changes. I would say that I think that the changes are fairly easy to make. They'll be made overseas. The tooling is not going to be an expensive adjustment, and as I mentioned before, there are already a few products that have made these removable hatches for the batteries. It's just not really a widespread solution yet, and so if we require that and allow people the time to adapt, then I think it'll be a pretty quick, pretty easy adjustment over time, and it shouldn't add any significant cost to the packaging. It should just be like a one-time, tooling cost adjustment. It shouldn't make the individual products more expensive going forward. And again, if we don't be proactive on that, I think we'll hate the legislation ideas that come in the future.
Yeah, agreed. We are aware that in some circles within the public health and prevention side of things, there's a belief that the inner flow wrap is really helpful in terms of limiting overconsumption. I will say I did get to buy some wild gummies while I was in Nevada, the same gummies that I buy over here, and to just have the gummies loose in the container felt I was just going to say wild. However, the argument that somehow by wrapping them individually prevented me from having too many gummies, also felt like especially in the midst of that experience, was, I think there's a lot of flawed logic in there. I know what I'm getting. The dosing is right there on the packaging, and I'm not eating the gummies because I'm enjoying gummies. I'll get my Haribo for that. I'm there for the cannabis part, and so we'll be pointing to a lot of other states that don't require that interflow wrap, and then also working on some good statistics about how much plastic we're keeping from going into landfills moving forward.
Yeah, and the other thing we've been doing too is we've been reaching out to other sustainability groups. Like I mentioned, Zero Waste earlier. There's a couple other groups that I actually do still need to reach out to that I want to at least make sure they're aware of this bill. Hopefully, get their kind of broad-based support with something like this. As cannabis always is, sometimes we get a little bit higher scrutiny and whatnot. And so I think the more we can get other sustainability groups that are just kind of broad-based organizations that have always pushed, smart sustainability legislation for the state of Washington, regardless of industry. I think if we can get all of those large groups on board to support this bill, I think that'll also help kind of get this across the finish line to, kind of help normalize the idea as far as this isn't some crazy cannabis idea. This is just really smart sustainability legislation.
And I will say, in that stakeholder sort of coalition building that Jason and I have been doing so far, we're hearing over and over again that if this wasn't related to cannabis, this would be slam dunk legislation that Washington State would be excited to pass. So again, you're noticing a theme through all of this comprehensive work that we're doing. It is about education, normalization, and sort of helping everybody understand that we are more than 10 years into this experiment. We have not seen dramatic negative impacts, if anything, potentially positive impacts. And so finding ways to even be more sustainable, more vital, ethical, equitable is the way that we need to go in order to protect the health of the industry overall. All right. I am now going to ask for hands raised. Who would like to make sure that they remain informed as we head into the legislative session about this sustainability bill and or slash bills moving forward? I see John Kingsbury's hand up. Mike, Elizabeth. I can see a few others.
Got a comment in the comments too, Jamie Osborne.
Yeah, combining containers into larger sizes would help lower the risk of missing scans, errors on the sales floor. Absolutely.
And she wanted to be included on the list too.
Oh, got it. All right.
I'll also just say that we do have our sustainability committee meetings the first Wednesday of every month at 3:30. It's on Zoom. So if anybody is not only passionate about coming to lobby day and staying plugged in, but actually wants to get involved and help with this process, we'd love to have you. Feel free to drop me or Nathan a line and we'll get you added.
Awesome. All right. Gosh, at the risk of putting us ahead of schedule by 6 minutes. Nice done,
Pretty
Jason.
good because I just talked for a long time and I hadn't wasn't even look at the clock. So
Yeah, no, you're good. Well, and I think what we've sort of been running into are opportunities to just talk about the legislative process in general. This one, though, is really, really straightforward. What I will sort of flag about this bill is that it is the first time that we're going to see this bill language hit. So, as I had mentioned in other seminars, a lot of times, even though we've also worked this through the regulatory side of things, so people have had eyes on it already, and we have received feedback about it already. Um, there still may be sort of new challenges that come up that, despite the fact that we've been doing years of stakeholder feedback and engagement with opposition and coalition building, there still may be something new that comes up that we hadn't considered. And so, again, that's a part of that. Sometimes it takes years to move through legislation. So I'm really excited about getting a hearing. We do know, however, it has been announced that Senator Shoemake, who is the sponsor for this bill, is not seeking reelection. So this is the last year that we're going to have her. That doesn't mean, though, that if we don't get this through in this short session, that bill disappears. We've got some magic that we're going to be working. We're trying to see if Shoemake is interested in making this one of the bills that she says, in my last legislative session, I'd like to see this one go through. So we're trying to get a little bit of oomph there. But I believe the Democratic Party is already sort of identifying, or at least she has identified who she would like to run to sort of take over the work that she's been doing up there, and starting to really build a closer relationship with that person so that they're aware of the issues. Again, so much of this work, what actually happens in the hearing room, is really important. But I think somebody, Jessica, you had mentioned this in municipal stuff. The things that actually are happening in the hearing room oftentimes are the performative aspect, the display, the on the record version of all of the behind the scenes, all of the extra meetings, the coalition building that's happening around it. And sometimes that means getting to know a candidate before they're even elected for the bill to make sure that it continues to move forward.